Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Apex card. This time we got UFC Fight Night, Bonfim versus Brown. Actually, surprisingly decent card with a couple bangers on the main card. But yeah, it's Mark Berry TMA. Let's make some cash this week. All right, starting off at a 195-pound catch weight, we got Zach Reese taking on Jackson McVeigh. I mentioned the catch weight because Zach Reese is taking this fight on short notice, about a week's notice, a little bit less than that, I believe. He's coming to this fight against sophomore outing for Jackson McVeigh. Reese sitting at a pretty big favorite despite the short notice, minus 310. McVeigh plus 260. Mm, Reese, pretty well rounded dude. Good BJJ off his back and on top. Um, Powerful strikes, dangerous striker. Does tend to gas as fights go on, but he's dangerous wherever the fight goes. And another problem of his is his chin isn't great, and his ability to, or his tendency to play BJJ off his back also doesn't help that chin. He's been knocked out twice in the UFC off his back playing BJJ, which is not a very good sign. Taking on Jackson McVeigh, very, very green prospect, but a guy with a lot of potential, in my opinion. Powerful striker like Zach Reese, also has very good jiu-jitsu, but is a lot more aggressive in his jiu-jitsu from top position, loves the front hand lock position, has quite a few Darce chokes already in his career. Just got off a debut outing against Bruno Ferreira, which is a pretty unfortunate guy to pull in your debut on short notice. Got finished pretty quickly with an armbar, but so I think this fight is a lot better for Jackson McVeigh. I think this is very recency biased for against Jackson McVeigh. I know he came off, kind of got smoked in his debut, but Bruno Ferreira is fighting in the top 15, in a few weeks. So I feel like that's not. I feel like now that he's relaxed and now he's in control of his kind of schedule. I know this is another short notice opponent for him, but he's been on this card the whole time, so he knows that he's always been training for this moment on this card. While Zach Reese is stepping up on short notice, yes, he is a UFC vet, but some of those losses aren't aging really well, in my opinion. And I think if Jackson McVeigh can get aggressive with the grappling and the wrestling early, he can force Zach Reese to play off his back and wear him out. As long as he doesn't get caught early, because some of the striking exchanges in that fight with Bruno Ferreira did look a little bit suspect, but as long as he can stay composed in the striking and shoot those shots early, I think he can win this fight. And I'm actually going to pick Jackson McVeigh to win this fight here by knockout. I think, while he keeps coming and coming and coming, I think Zach Reese is going to get tired from the short notice. He's going to wear out from the short notice. I think McVeigh can take over as the fight goes on. I told you I'm going to pick a lot of underdogs, and here we got another underdog pick for me at bantamweight. Miles Johns taking on Daniel Marcos. Johns plus 160, Daniel Marcos minus 185. Another short notice fight. This fight was put together, I believe, last week. Johns lost his opponent. Marcos lost his opponent for UFC Qatar, and they just kind of booked him up. And I kind of spoiled my pick because I am going to pick the underdog here. I'm picking Miles Johns in this fight. Listen, the kind of urgency, I get that Marcos was undefeated and lost to Montel Jackson, who is a quality loss, but even looking at his record and the type of urgency he fights with and the kind of aggressiveness he fights with just doesn't seem to match his record, and especially considering some of those losses are very shallow, right? Split decision win against Yanez, very controversial. Split decision win against Davy Grant, extremely controversial. Many people thought Davy Grant won that fight, including myself. Davy Grant totally won that fight. So just the amount of urgency, the lack of danger apparent. Only finished winning the UFC is Simon Oliveira, who we know is a trash bag. So is his lack of urgency, lack of danger. He does have cardio for 3 rounds, which is a good sign, right? He has always been a guy that can go the distance, so that's always good. That's not really been the case for Miles Johns. Early on in his UFC career, he was a bit of a gas bag himself, but he's pulled it together recently. He's looked really good on this. I'm not going to say run because he has lost his last 2, but look at the guys he's losing to. Felipe Lima, close decision, where he rocked him bad in the 3rd round. So you can see those cardio improvements. He carries that power late in the fight. Then a very controversial split decision loss to G Matsumoto. We know how good he is. So, I've been very impressed with the work of Miles Johns lately, despite not being on the right side of some of these close decisions. And I like him in this fight. Listen, I think he's going to land the harder shots. I think he's going to be more aggressive in this fight. The forward pressure, throwing bombs, the judges are going to like that. I just think he also has the wrestling upside. Listen, we don't talk about his wrestling nearly enough because he strikes a lot, but his wrestling is very good too. He tends to gas out a little bit more if he uses it, but it's always there as an option if he is getting touched up a little bit on the feet. And I think if Marcos tries to take him to the ground, it's not going to work. So give me Johns to win this fight by decision, but a knockout would not be surprising in my opinion. All right, strawweight fight. We got Tisha Pennington taking on Denise Gomes. Tisha Pennington plus 155, Denise Gomes minus 180. Now, this is another popular underdog pick with a lot of people is Tisha Pennington due to the fact that she is still performing at a pretty high level for her age, right? 36. She just came off a pretty long layoff, but she's actually looked really good in her past couple fights. Past 3 fights, I believe, at strawweight, where she arguably beat Tabitha Ricci. And then she had 2 good performances against Luana Pinheiro and against Carlos Esparza. So 2 pretty good names. Pinheiro sucks, but Carlos Esparza is a good name. And she did dominate Luana Pinheiro in that fight. So pretty good, return for Tisha Pennington, but she is running to a brick wall, in my opinion, with Denise Gomes. I've been very high on Denise Gomes in her UFC career. I picked her almost every fight. Picked her against Yasmin Howard is a huge underdog, and she ended up winning that fight by knockout in 30 seconds. Picked her against Angela Hill. Obviously, that didn't go as planned, but she's gotten and looked better and better as she progresses. At only 25, right? Came out as a big underdog against Eduarda Moore and beat her. Then came out in her last fight and absolutely smoked Elise Reed. So, like I said, I've been very high on Denise Gomes. 25 years old, improving every single time. She's got a ton of power in her hands, and she can mix up the wrestling too. So, give me Denise Gomes to win the fight by decision. I don't see her knocking out Tisha Pennington. Pennington's tough. Pennington's very quick on the feet, so I don't see her getting that. But I do see Denise Gomes landing the bigger shots, getting takedowns, and getting control against Tisha Pennington. All right, heavyweight fight. We got Josh Hokett taking on Max Jimenez. Josh Hokett minus 400, Jimenez plus 300. And, at first glance, it's like, oh, why are the odds so wide? We got one guy who's making his UFC debut, the other guy also making his UFC debut. One's a wrestler, one's a grappler. So, realistically, the fight should be where the grappler wants it to be, right? And that's Max Jimenez. Max Jimenez being the BJJ black belt. But, as you look at it closer, and it is a heavyweight fight, and that plays into a lot. I just don't see Max being able to defend takedowns or get grappling going off his back. Now, it's certainly possible, right? If Hokett wants to play like the guard game or whatever, if Hokett wants to, be close to him on the ground, he could definitely pull up some sweeps. But just from the level of competition and just from, the overall game I've seen from Jimenez, it's not something that I would say is going to be able to stick him around long term in the UFC. Whereas Hokett, despite how much I hate him, he does have really good wrestling. He's a good athlete, a bit faster for the weight class, and he does have good ground and pound, right? When this guy is on top, he will, instead of just laying in the guard and, kind of pitter patter hammer fists, he will actually posture up, get on his 2 feet and start pounding at him. So that's going to be a big advantage for him in this fight. Obviously, anything could happen. It's heavyweight, but Hokett should be fine in this fight. I got him winning by knockout. All right, bantamweight fight in the top 10. We got Mayra Bueno Silva taking on Jacqueline Cavalcanti. Cavalcanti is sitting at minus 235. Bueno Silva plus 200. And, like a couple of these, fighters in the card, a lot of late love coming in for Bueno Silva. She's a pretty big underdog recently, and I kind of get it. But I also understand that she is dangerous still, even at 34. Like I said, dangerous wherever the fight goes. Power in her hands, good grappling, but just the problem is this defensively, and she's been a gas bag her entire career. And those are just 2 things that don't really improve as you age. Those are things that usually start getting more tired as you age, and usually, don't react to damage as well as you age. So those are 2 things that really don't really stand out to me in this fight. I haven't been crazy high on Cavalcanti, but she has, looked decent in her bantamweight fight so far. Like I said, I am going to fade Cavalcanti eventually because she is a bit, um, what's the word? Heavy on her feet, I guess. Just very plodding with her striking. But she should be good in this fight as long as she survives the early storm from Bueno Silva, takes over as the fight goes on. She could definitely win this fight. Give you Cavalcanti a win by decision, but I'm going to err on the cautious side for this one. All right, that should be a really good scrap at bantamweight. We got Ricky Simone taking on Raoni Barcelos. Simone minus 170, Raoni Barcelos plus 145. And I think these odds, I'm going to pick Simone, first of all, but I think these odds are way, way, way too wide. This seems like a pretty mere matchup to me. Just the fact that Howney actually strikes with more volume, and that's kind of a problem because Ricky, we've seen if he can't get takedowns, he's kind of lost on the feet at times. But the thing I think that's going to separate Ricky from Howney Barcelos is that while he doesn't strike with as much volume, he does shoot takedowns at a very high rate, which I think is going to prove well against an older veteran like Howney Barcelos. Don't get me wrong, I love to see Barcelos win this fight. This dude is on a tear as of recent. Is on a 3-fight win streak, two or one by finish and two by dominant decision against Peyton Talbot and Cody Garbrandt, who are really good names. So for Howney to win this fight, that mean the world to me. This guy's knocking on the door of the top 15 again. So again, like I said, that mean a lot to me if you were to win this fight. But in terms of just looking at realistically, I can see Ricky hitting a lot harder than Barcelos, shooting more takedowns, having a better ground game, in my opinion. I think on top, he's a little bit more dangerous with the heavy hands and the submission game. So I like Simone in this fight for those reasons. Again, I'm very cautious about this. I wouldn't line this if I were lining this. I wouldn't line it higher than like minus 120 for him, just because of the way he's struggling with Cameron Smotherman and the way he was struggling against Javi Bajaret. I would not be surprised at all if he gets blown out in this fight by a wide margin. We've seen him be chinny in the past too, but just to the power upside and all that, I just think County hasn't been hit hard in a while. And when he gets hit, he is very, very old in terms of fight years. So give me Simone by knockout. Can't be too confident in that. All right, featured prelim at featherweight. We got Hyder Emil taking on Jamal Emmers. Emil is minus 140, Emmers plus 120. And I think these odds are correct in my opinion. Listen, Emmers, he's going to have a lot of, physical strength coming into this fight, right? Longer, faster, probably more powerful. But the things he lacks, the things that Hyder absolutely excels in, that is durability. Hyder's just a guy who's just going to rush forward. Durability and cardio are the two things, and the volume. Three things, actually, that Hyder Emil absolutely excels in at MMA. Those are the three things he basically has. And he has the wrestling chops, too, if he wants to go to that early in this fight to kind of wear down a guy like Emmers. Listen, Emmers can be a very, very good fighter, arguably, in my opinion, top 15, if he's able to put all his tools together. The problem is, can he put all his tools together? And that's been an issue his entire UFC career, right? The durability has been on the bad side, right? You've seen him not react well to power, get knocked out cold a few times, actually, by Nate Landwehr, Julian Erosa, a couple of those guys. We've seen him, start to fade as fights go on, right? He has early success against these guys. Then he fades as fights go on. We've seen him, give up takedowns, crucial takedowns when he needs it. But, you've also seen him, knock guys out in 30 seconds. We've seen him, get busy with the strikes early and, just pick these guys apart. But I don't think Emil's going to be the guy that's going to sit back and wait for Emmers to kind of piece him up. I think he's going to go right at Emmers as soon as the fight starts, like every fight, and just kind of go balls to the walls, wrestling, striking, whatever he wants to do in this fight. I think if he just goes at Emmers immediately, I think he can do it. So give me Emil in this fight to win by knockout. I think he's going to, like I said, weather the early storm, get takedowns maybe, stay in this guy's face, and eventually put him out with that power. So I like Emil in this fight a lot. All right, very intriguing fight coming up at middleweight. Christian Leroy Duncan is taking on Marco Tulio. Tulio is the favorite here at minus 165. Duncan, slight dog at plus 145. And like I said, very intriguing fight for a couple of reasons. This is two very, very dynamic strikers, especially for middleweight. We've seen Leroy Duncan have a spinning knockout in his last fight by spinning elbow, which is very impressive. And Tulio's been an absolute terror his entire run with the UFC. He's defeated on Contender Series Mateo Duclos and Yusri Belgarawi. And then in UFC, he's knocked out Pateria and Trayshawn Gore. So this guy's on an absolute tear at 185 pounds. And, this is a big step up in comp for Tulio, but I also like him in this fight. Like I said, Duncan's a very diverse striker. So is Tulio. He's got also spinning attacks, but he's also got, a more composed game too. If he's able to kind of relax and settle into his game, he does have very good technical abilities. Nice straight shots, a good jab, kicks as well. He'll end those combinations with the kicks. And that's one problem I have with Christian Leroy Duncan is you never know what you're going to get with him. And that could be a bad thing, right? He could just want to hold up against the cage the whole time. He could just want to spin around like a top the whole time. And if you're doing that against a high-level striker, we've seen him against high-level guys. Armin Petrosian, especially Gregory Rodriguez. We saw that if they can just avoid the spinning bullshit. I mean, Gregory Rodriguez put an absolute beating on this guy for 15 minutes. So if Tulio, like I said, if Tulio gets knocked out, wouldn't be crazy surprised. But As long as he can avoid that spinning stuff, man, he's gonna absolutely put a masterpiece on Duncan's face, in my opinion. So give me Tully to win this fight by decision. Duncan's a tough guy. I don't think he's getting knocked out, but I like Tully on the spot a lot. All right, catchweight fight of 161 pounds. Big asterisk behind that, and we see that in the odds here, right? Ishmael Bonfim minus 120 against Chris Padilla, who's at even odds right now. This fight was odds were very wide. No, this before you go there, this is not like a betting scandal, right? We've had a couple of those in the past. Isaac Dolgarian, whatever, but this is a little bit different. Ishmael Bonfim, obviously, as you guys know, missed the mark by 5 pounds today. And that's a big weight miss, along with the fact that he just didn't look good, which is another big red flag. Because the dude's 5'8", only 5'8", for lightweight, which isn't like it isn't a height where you normally see big weight misses. And he's not like a big guy, man. So obviously he's not cutting the weight right, which is honestly a bigger issue than if the dude just didn't try, at least for fighting purposes. Now for Padilla, there's a couple. I was going to pick him before this, actually, before the weight miss by Bonfim, but now I feel even more confident in him. Right? Maybe the first round's going to be a little bit tougher on him because Bonfim's carrying all that extra weight. But if he gets out of the first round, he's going to have a big cardio advantage. This guy is very technical in the striking. He can sit back a lot, but when he goes, he is very, very dangerous. Right? Good elbows, straight shots as well. He has takedowns in his arsenal. Hasn't used them in the past couple fights, but we saw against James Yontop, who's quietly making a run in the regional scene. If you get the takedowns going early, he was able to put him away very quick. So I don't think you can do that to a guy like Bonfim, but I think as the fight goes on and goes on, Bonfim, as we've seen in his state right now, he did not look good on the scale. So I have to imagine his cardio is going to be at a concern here. And even for a guy who's quit, not I'm not gonna say quit, but who's kind of lacked in the face of adversity, right? Dynamic striker and all that, but if Padilla weathers this early storm, I'm telling you, man, he's going to put a beating on Ishmael Bonfim. So giving Padilla to win the fight by decision, knockout prop could be live in the second and third round. All right, welterweight feature fight. We got Muslim Salikov taking on Rosh Medic. Salikov minus one or plus 125. Apologies. Rosh Medic minus 145. And listen, I don't know why these odds aren't even. Right? You got a guy in Salikov who still hits like a freight train at 41 years old, but obviously showing signs of physical decline as any 41-year-old would, but still hits like a freight train. Great counter punching. That's kind of a problem against Orosh Medic because this dude has literally been knocked down with the first punch the opponent threw in his last two fights. I'm not even joking, too. Against Punahele Soriano, knocked out in 30 seconds. Against Gilbert Urbina, dropped 20 seconds in. Now, he's able to knock out Gilbert Urbina because Urbina kind of sucks, but is he going to be able to have that success against Salikov? I don't know. Now, I am going to pick him because I do think that he's going to be a lot faster than Salikov. Going to be a lot more sharper, has the reach advantage, right? But I'm telling you, man, this should be it's definitely under 1.5 for me. Probably under a round, in my opinion. This fight's ending in the first round, probably by knockout. So, yeah, while Salikov might be the more well-rounded and a better counter puncher, I do trust that Medic will be able to land the first punch. I think if he lands the first punch, we've seen Salikov go down at times because of the age, the chin durability is weak. So, give me Medj in this fight. Not confident at all. And if you pick Salikov, wouldn't blame you. All right, co-main event. We got Matt Schnell taking on Joseph Morales. These odds have spiked these past couple days. Matt Schnell at plus 355. Joseph Morales minus 455. That makes sense in my opinion. I get the respect for Matt Schnell, right? Who can't respect Matt Schnell, right? He has been through the ringer in the UFC, right? He's faced some of the top guys in the weight class. Goes out in a shield every time. As you can see, he's lost 7 times in the UFC, all by finish. But a lot of his UFC wins have also been finished, right? A lot of submissions, great off his back, good jiu-jitsu. Also good striking, but, the obvious problem with Schnell, and this is like saying the grass is green, but the dude's chin strength obviously is just very weak. Even on the ground, he's susceptible to getting submitted. He's gotten submitted a couple times on the ground, so as you can see, very susceptible to getting finished, and that's a problem against Morales because Morales looked absolutely phenomenal his last 2 fights on Ultimate Fighter, where he submitted Eduardo Chapulin and beat Imanol Rodriguez, 2 very, very good fighters. And then he also submitted Adiris Alibi, who, I don't know why he was minus 500 hindsight, but Morales smoked that guy, and he did it with wrestling. He did it with BJJ. And I think that's what's going to get it done against Matt Schnell. Matt Schnell's getting taken on by Jimmy Flick. Joseph Morales definitely going to take this guy down. Now, I know he may not be as dangerous as Jimmy Flick, but with time, right? And with the striking, if he strikes to set up the takedowns, he's going to be in a lot of favorable positions to get this finish. So I like Joseph Morales by sub in this fight. I think he gets finished inside the distance, definitely. But yeah, we're gonna have to wait and see what these odds do because I think his finish line recently in this week was like minus 105 or something. I know that's gone up, but I like him a lot in this fight. All right, main event of the evening: Gabriel Bonfim taking on Randy Brown. Bonfim minus 150, Randy Brown plus 130. And listen, I'm gonna be completely honest. This is a slightly biased pick, right? Because I'm not a fan of Gabriel Bonfim. I'm not a fan of the way first of all, the way he fights. Second of all, just his, I don't know. There's something about him. I don't like him, but I do like Randy Brown. I like his style. He definitely deserves this main event. He's been a UFC vet for a very long time. So this is just a long time coming for him. Hopefully, he gets a chance to kind of put it all together because you see in the past he's struggled at certain times, right? We've seen him, kind of struggle with wrestling at the time. We see him struggling with, some people who can get in his face, pressure him with his strikes. He's been dropped a couple times. He's very susceptible to being finished, in my opinion, which is a big concern in this fight. And I'll get to that in a little bit, but when he puts it all together, man, he's a great fighter. Sharp jab, good hands. He's mainly a boxer, but he has great boxing skills. He's gonna have a great boxing advantage against Gabriel Bonfim. But the problem for Brown in this fight is that Bonfim does have good calf kicks, and the wrestling and grappling is definitely there, right? For all the shit, I'm gonna give Bonfim, right? You gotta give him two things. One, his striking is pretty solid, right? Obviously, he got kind of pieced up by Wonder Boy, but that's a little bit of a different striker. Hard to control, especially with Bonfim's, kind of meat and potato style. But the front headlock sequences and the guillotines and the dart chokes for Bonfim, they've always been his number one, and I can't blame him for wanting to go to that more, right? But the problem with Bonfim is the way he's kind of losing and going to close decisions in these fights. And look at the people he's fighting, right? Stephen Thompson, karate striker. Nicholas Dalby knocked him out. Karate striker, long striker, has great cardio, has good takedown defense. These are all attributes that Randy Brown has. Maybe he's not a karate striker, but he's very long. He's very fast. Good takedown defense, around 75%. So I'm telling you, man, if Randy Brown puts it all together, he can put a beating on Gabriel Bonfim, in my opinion. I'm going to pick him to win by knockout because of those reasons. We've seen Bonfim get hurt in the past by these long strikers. If Randy Brown keep on the end of his punches, we've seen Bonfim struggle to get on the inside, and I think that's where Randy Brown's going to have success. He will have to weather an early storm. I do agree with that, right? Because Bonfim is a fast starter. Like I said, he's got a good submission game. We've seen Brown struggle a little bit on the ground, but if he can just mind his P's and Q's there, get back up on the feet and kind of tune this guy up, I think he can eventually find a finishing blow. So I have him by knockout, and that's going to be the end of the breakdown. So much appreciation from me to you for being here for another breakdown. I'm sorry, this is like very late, but I just need to get this out anyways. We'll have new graphics coming up soon at UFC 323. We got the same graphics coming up for the next couple of weeks, but December, I'm going to show some new graphics to you guys made by Fino, who I'm going to link up at the top. Very good stuff by him, but thank you guys so much for this video. I'll see you guys next time.